Hello, everybody. Normally, I say it's the longest running episodic, but that doesn't really apply here because it hasn't been quite that long or as episodic. There can still be an episodic thing, but it hasn't doesn't quite have the same ring or cachet. I tried to click for some kind of a response or some comments, and nothing was coming up, Eric. I didn't know what to do with my hands. It was very
Yeah,
confusing. It was all very confusing. I just didn't know what to do with my hands. So this
very
is
well
the
done.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's muscle memory at this point. But
Right.
this is the recorded version of it. Again, it is not the live stream. It is not the live stream recorded. Some people are still getting confused about this. I'm still getting questions. It is not the
Yep.
live stream recorded form.
Yeah,
That is the
correct.
reason there are no comments. There's no comment section we have to cater to in the same way. It gives us a chance to talk out some things. So in that spirit, tonight we'll do a couple things. I'll do a quick announcement off the top, then we'll talk about what's on our mind, and then we do have a smaller topic and then a main topic where we'll talk a little bit about do we still need local card shops, and there'll be some appropriateness to that. So first, announcement time, and the first announcement is that for the first time in this channel's history, a thing is sponsored. Yes, I know there have been accusations or suggestions to the contrary. It's like, no, nothing on the channel has actually been sponsored. I haven't received a dime for anything that's actually happened on this channel. Yes, exactly. But we do have a partnership going on with AMG Collectibles. I did already allude to that previously, so that they're actually going to be sponsoring some stuff on the channel, and then also I'm going to be doing some things over there on the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel. So right now, I will leave a link in the description if you want to check out the channel. There's nothing on there right now, but in the coming days and weeks, there's going to be some stuff going on there, and there's probably going to be a live show at some point that we're going to do on there, as well as a bunch of other content talking about new products and everything else. So we'll do two things. First, we're going to have a lovely scrolling ticker here for a little bit. AMGcollectibles.com. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And I'm also going to include a link to their website as well so that people can check it out. It is a card shop based out of Nova Scotia. So it is, we've made lots of reference to it. They're good friends of the channel, and they wanted us to join in on some of that. And I'm going to be doing some stuff with them, as I said, on the YouTube channel. So I want to thank AMG Collectibles for being the very first sponsor of the Because I'm Carlos YouTube channel and this podcast. It's exciting times, Eric. You're not carrying all the load with the like button. It's not just
Yeah,
you anymore.
no, and that's quite a relief. That's a lot of weight off my shoulders.
And in that spirit, Bobbles, I have agreed to take 5% off Eric's bill on the like button. 5% off. It's pretty magnanimous. Big time. And thank you to AMG for making it possible.
That is big time. That 5%, Eric, man, it's like a coupon. That's almost as big as the Crumble discount code.
It's getting pretty good.
I
You got to
know.
think. You got to think. The 5% is off of something that is like it's almost like government transfers. The amount of dollars they're changing hands on the like button. So when people hit the like button, I bill Eric. There are some
Is
governments.
this a 5% Canadian discount or US discount though? We do have to clarify.
Well, maybe we'll do a 5% Canadian discount where I still charge Eric more.
Oh, okay, okay.
Well, that's
We're very
that.
I
nice
just wanted
about
to
it.
make
We're
sure
very
we
nice
were
about it,
understood.
but it's very sneaky.
That,
It's thievery, but it's very sneaky like.
that only seems fair.
Yeah, seems right. But again, thank you. I'll leave the scrolling ticker here going for a little bit. If you listen to the audio version of it, it's just amgcollectibles.com. And all that stuff's in the description. I'll include it in there. But yeah. And then for the very first time on the YouTube side of things, for the very first time, I actually have to hit that little checkbox. This says sponsored content. There's a little checkbox. First time I actually get to hit the thing because because I was like, all right, I know it's there, but now we actually have to press it. I'm going to push the button, Bubbles. I'm going to push the button.
Push the right button, not the red one. Push.
Yeah, the red
Is it a
button. I
button
leave
or a
it to others.
checkbox? Like,
It's a checkbox.
is
It's a
it a
checkbox.
checkbox?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
a
okay.
checkbox. Yeah, yeah. So that'll be the one. We'll push that so that we included that. But yes, they will be sponsoring this and also the Friday live stream. So very very exciting, very exciting. But that'll be separate. So for tonight, let's talk about this. So first of all, Eric, good evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great. Doing really well. Had a lot of fun today at cross country practice. I coach a cross country team. Here in the about 20 minutes north of Boston, and it pouring rain today, and kids love playing in the rain. So we had a great practice out in the pouring rain, sheets of rain. Um, Everyone was muddy and dirty, and all the kids were smiling and had a lot of fun. They'll probably all get pneumonia now, and the season will be lost. But we had a lot of fun today.
Well, let's say we're able to. So I did include in the YouTube version of it the image of Doc from Punch Out. I did include the image on there so that you could see basically what Eric what was happening with Eric and the students as they were running. So they're basically more of that, but with rain.
Yes, Yeah, I was out there on my bike again today. My bike is very muddy right now.
Do you think it would have worked if you had like played the song that plays during that thing, and all the people are like, "What is that song?" It's like, "Oh, children, you're too young. You're too young. Just trust me. Run faster. Run. Be
Yeah.
inspired."
So
That
I have a question.
awesome montage.
Go ahead, Bobbles.
I just had a question for Eric because I am very unfamiliar with him. I didn't even know it was a thing, but I showed Carlos. I was very proud of myself. I sold some bicycle parts today. Um,
Okay.
Shimano brake pads.
Yeah.
I am only familiar with brake pads on automobiles, but apparently bicycles have brake pads. So are Shimano a good brand? Because somebody paid $50 for these things.
Yeah. That's one of the two bigger brands that you can get. Yeah.
So
So
these the brake pads that you use on your bougie mobile as you bike your way around these parts.
it's important to have good brake pads if you want your bike to stop. So I
Interesting.
assume they were.
I was unfamiliar.
I assume for $50 they were disc brake pads.
Yes.
And do you recall whether or not there were any letters on it like XT or XTR?
So they are the J02A resin MTB disc brake pads from
So
Shimano.
between last week and luxury Crocs, and now we've got bike brake pads. Bobbles, what are you doing over here, man? Like, what's going on? What's going on over there, man?
Dude, I got them for 50 cents. It's only for $50. Let's go.
I get it. As the kids say,
Yeah,
as the kids say,
yeah,
I get it.
they would probably go more at a bike shop. So good for you.
Hmm. Right.
You
I'm not
sell
a
that?
bike shop.
Did you
I
sell
was
that Ray
surprised they
Borg
sold.
card yet? That atomic refractor Ray Borg card? Did you ever sell that?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
It's
okay,
still here.
okay.
It's still here.
I like that you put
No,
a little
it's still here.
graveliness into that. It's like it's not just so here. It's like it's still
Christmas is coming, Bobbles. Christmas is coming.
here. Christmas is coming. For Christmas, you should send him a picture of it and say send money and I'll send you the real thing. All right. So it's outside of shilling bike parts, Bobbles. What else is going on?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to take up time like going into it deep, but I did put out an announcement, no secrets. I have since decided we are back. Me and my wife are going to continue the SGC submissions. Um, More so as a testament to all of the people who have supported us. It wouldn't have happened without them. So thank you to everybody. If you watch this for whatever reason, as Eric likes to say, you have nothing better to do with your time. But thank you, and we will move forward with the submissions like we always have. So
Oh, that's great.
Very
I'm glad
exciting. Very
you were able
exciting.
to work stuff out with them. That's good news.
Yeah, it was very similar to a professional wrestling retirement, even though Bobbles wasn't retiring. But then he comes back and
I'm
goes,
doing
"I
my
will
best
never
impression of
retire."
Brady. I'm just doing my best impression of Brady.
There you go.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair. At least the first time. Or because he did retire once. He did try that before he went to the Jets, and another person went to the Jets and encountered the darkness. Didn't work out. just just saying. We'll talk about more of that another time. All right. So first, let's shift over and let's talk about kind of what's on our minds. So let me get the football portion of the program out of the way here for a moment. Not much to say. Through three quarters, it was pretty good for the Packers. Through three quarters, it was pretty decent. I was impressed that they were able to do certain things, but I wasn't too surprised. But I guess what it really comes down to is this: 3 touchdowns for Jordan Love. Good. Not really putting up a lot of yards. I understood. They were doing a good job balancing it out, though. I was pretty impressed with that. But when it came down to the fourth quarter, everything stalled and nothing happened. And Atlanta was able to come all the way back, which happens when you don't generate any offense. But I think maybe the most telling thing, without going into too much depth, Eric, I think when Desmond Ritter, he didn't play particularly well, he wasn't terrible, but he didn't play particularly well. When he threw more passing yards than the Packers' entire offense generated yards, that's bad. What's also bad is when the Atlanta Falcons are able to get 200 yards on the ground and nearly rush for as many yards as the entire Packer offense. So if you notice, I just said the passing was nearly equivalent and the running was nearly equivalent, which is to say they were a few yards short of doubling the yard output of the other team.
Yeah, that's never good.
No. And that's how you blow a 10-plus point lead in the fourth quarter. Not so great. Very much a Swiss cheese defense. The Green Bay folk like their cheese. Probably not with that many holes, because after a while it was like, I'm sitting there like, Atlanta's just going to run and run and run. You literally know what they're going to do. Do you want to try something else?
All I would say about that, Carlos, is that it doesn't sound very Gouda.
Wow. Wow. That's almost as bad as Bobbles' comeback announcement that was like, yeah, okay, I gotta get it. He literally played Back in Black. I was like, come on, really? Boo! Boo this man!
The lyrics went with it, though.
Boo this man! Eric, help me out here. Boo this man!
Boo!
Heinous. Just truly heinous. Yeah. So that's it for me. Anything football-wise you guys want to touch on, you're more than welcome.
Well, I want to go a little bit real quick on the football. First, my Ravens are 2-0.
Sure.
There we go. I also want to send a very deserved, thank you to Eric's squad, the New England Patriots. They sucked enough to lose, but they were able to contain or minimize somewhat Tyreek Hill, which was very impressive. And they allowed Ramondre Stevenson to get a touchdown late in the game, garbage time, which allowed me to win my fantasy matchup this week without even needing Michael Thomas tonight, because I really did not want to rely on Dustin Saints and Michael Thomas and all of that garbage. So I've already solidified my win, so thankful for that. But I'm going to go Wilson on you guys and not Russell Wilson, because he started off hot yesterday. I'm going to go Jeff Wilson on you guys, and I'm going to throw the slammer down, and I'm going to say Sam Howell is 4 times the better investment than Will Grier. Going out there and saying,
who is 4 times a better investment than Kyler Murray. So you're saying Sam Howell is a 16
we're just
time.
like, Will Grier is the man, and Sam Howell is 4 times better. Because I'm gonna say I'm not a Washington fan, but the game was on. The Broncos came out smoking them. You were talking about the Packers game. Broncos were up by 18.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Howell, I was watching that kid, and I call him a kid because this is what his 3rd career start, I think, something like that.
It's something like that.
And he has no offensive line. The Washington offensive line sucks, but he will stand in that pocket and fire darts. And if he gets an offensive line, he could be a talented quarterback. Just saying. So 4 times better the investment than Will Grier. You got it there. Sam Howell. Go spend your money wisely.
Bold move. Hashtag invest, the man says. What are you going to do? The words of Bobbles Ball Cards are not necessarily those the words of anybody else on this podcast. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, but I'm putting in the qualifiers. Like, the words of Bobbles and Ball Cards are not necessarily those of either Bougie, Eric, or myself. Just making sure we covered that. Y'all do you on your own time. I'm not going to touch that. Fair enough. Anything football-wise you want to touch on, Eric? Anything caught your eye?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. You had said something about how the Packers were good for 3 quarters. The Patriots were good for the 4th quarter, and actually made it a game, but just couldn't convert. The offensive line for the Patriots also stink, and Mac Jones got beat up there a little bit, and he got hurried many times. He got sacked a few times. It was rough to watch. But the thing that I want to focus on is Pat Patriot made its comeback for the first time in a few years in Foxborough, which is, everybody that I talk to would rather see the old school Patriot, Pat Patriot uniforms and logo rather than the flying Elvis. Nobody asked for there to be a change many years ago now, 20 years ago or more. Maybe even 30 now. Fans didn't want to change. They flipped they just basically tossed out the old school, brought in Flying Elvis, and that's what we've had for 20, 30 years.
So
And it was
you
awesome.
just so I understand, just so I'm clear on this, Bubbles, help me out on this. Just so we're clear, you are lamenting the previous loss of the old logo and like style uniforms that are representative of suck. In terms of the Flying Elvis, I don't care if it's the stupidest logo in the universe that is representative of 6 Super Bowls. Actually
Every,
winning.
Everyone would rather see Pat Patriot than Flying Elvis. They're just they're some of
Bubbles,
the
I don't know what to say here.
they're
I
some
got
of the
nothing.
coolest uniforms in NFL history. You have to remember the Patriots were an original franchise, AFL franchise in
I agree.
'64, I think. And they used to play at Fenway Park. They used to play in a bunch of other stadiums all around Boston when they were the Boston Patriots. And Pat Patriot's still around, and its designer, Phil Bissell, who's 90 something years old, is still alive, and he's very happy to see Pat back.
I'm sure. Great. Go ahead, Bubbles.
Did he invent the vacuum cleaner as well?
No, just
Okay.
That's
I just wanted to
that's a
make
lot
sure.
less
just
cool. That's a lot
through
less cool.
Pat Patriot.
That was a shame.
I just wanted to make sure.
So
Look, I'm back to what I said a moment ago. Like, do I really look for the Dallas Stars during the entire heyday and run up? They had changed the uniform, but they changed it, and then they had basically a sustained run of being a contender for the better part of a decade. So, am I going to go and lament the loss of the old uniform when it was representative? I like the when the Minnesota North Stars carried over, they actually changed it into a certain uniform that basically they retained in the early days in Dallas, and all they did was add Dallas to it. They actually had the early day Dallas Star uniform was actually a Minnesota uniform minus the Dallas part. So they made an adjustment to it, which I actually like those uniforms. I thought they did a real good job with them. But then, literally the same year or the year after they won the Stanley Cup, they changed it over and then spent a decade being a contender, including getting the Stanley Cup Finals again. So those uniforms are representative of a winning period where that team was a consistent contender and good. Yeah, did I like the old uniform better? But it's like, no, if you guys are gonna play good, wear these. If you're gonna play good, wear these. It's fine.
I
think it's fair.
Go ahead,
Eric.
Wallace.
I was just gonna say, I think it's fair to like and appreciate the old retro style, but I think it's also nice for teams to freshen it up a little bit. Keep those, make it special when they wear those retros.
Well,
Make
that's
it
the thing. They
make
do
it
still get to use the red. It's not like they never went back to
yeah.
the old school uniform, like because the NFL likes money. So they're like, yeah, we'll still sell that, but yeah, you'll wear it like once or twice a year. They'll bring back the throwbacks, like the Packers do that literally all the way to the Acme Packers, and I'm like, who specifically was calling out who needed to see the Acme Packers uniform? That specific one. That's the one we needed. But look, you can do it. Obviously, they'll allow it. It'll work. That's what you
Does
want to
anybody
do.
know what are the Browns retro? Just a different shade of orange?
Ask Neo. You'll have to tell us. That's probably all it is.
The Steelers, they're
would
going to
just say
update theirs and put the little logo on the other side of the helmet. That'll be the Steelers retro.
What's going to happen is Eric is
weird
upset about
helmets
this
in the
now.
league.
What's going to happen is at some point, if things don't turn around, at some point the Patriots are going to switch their uniform and just put a Kansas City Chief logo on the side of it. It's like, dang, play better, play better, fix it, play better.
The last 2 weeks have not been enjoyable, I'll tell you that. But it was nice to see Pat Patriot back. The big logo at the center of the field and the red uniforms with Pat on the helmets it was fun. I enjoyed it.
So when do we get you, Eric, rocking the Pat Patriot style jersey? Like, if you're such and such staunch support of it, when do we actually like? Have you gone? Have you gone to get the hookup?
I have a red Pat's Patriot baseball hat. I do own one of those. I've worn that for many years.
I see.
With the recent traditional like happenings in Boston sports, is a lot of the merchandise up there been on clearance a lot?
I'm not answering that.
I just like the way he's slowly setting up. He's like putting out the reel and just slowly going like this, just like slowly pulling back, getting the reel. All right,
There
let's
has
move
been a
on.
lot of heartbreak. Like the Patriots went
They
from
deserve all the heartbreak they can get. They got 6 Super Bowls and a couple of World
Well,
Series, so
the
shut
Red
up.
Sox, the Red
Even a
Sox
Stanley Cup, even an undeserved Stanley Cup. So you're fine. You're
are,
fine. I don't want to hear it.
the Red Sox are in last place. The Patriots are in last place. The
No one
Bruins had
cares.
the
No
Bruins
one
had
feels bad for you.
the Bruins had the biggest collapse in NHL history.
Fold all 3 franchises. No one cares.
And the Celtics are just a disappointment because they should be better.
Yeah, all 4 of them have won championships within like the last 15 or 20 years. In some cases, multiple. They'll be fine. Anyway, one last point I want to make real quick, because since I'm wearing the San Diego jersey a little bit, I mentioned it the Bobbles a little bit before. I just want to touch on it real quick, really brief, and then we'll move on. I'm very happy that we've reached the end of the baseball season, where Juan Soto has decided to slowly creep towards respectable numbers at the end of the year. It would have been nice to have that be consistent throughout, but kudos to him for having a 2 home run, 6 RBI game, which are making those stat lines looking pretty decent here at the tail end of the season. Would have been nice to have that consistently throughout the year, but I guess it's better than nothing. Just saying that. That's all. That's all. Just my thought on it. I'm happy that the final numbers are going to look pretty decent if everything goes well, and hopefully he finishes strong and the numbers look good. But it was weird. It's been a weird season, and we'll have to see what next year looks like. I think there's going to be some shakeups though. They've talked about it in the past that obviously Trout might be on the move. You know, my personal favorite, Fish Boy. Otani cleared out his locker and he may not be back. So the Angels are going to probably look very different next year. Definitely more things to talk about down the road as that comes in. However, one thing that I know for sure, and we talked about it before, I'm looking forward to it. Because now that we're mid-September, football season's now on, we're moving week by week, and we're slowly approaching October, which is one of the best sports months of the year. We're going to have football going on, full head of steam. We'll be past the late preseason games that is the first couple of weeks, where some teams are not quite up to full speed. So the game should be a little better by then. And hockey season will get started. That's great. And then playoff baseball for me is going to be fun, so I'll enjoy that. So yeah, lots of good options. And I think the NBA will also be probably getting going by that point, I believe, as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so all 4 will be going.
To touch on Eric's thing with the whole throwback retro thing, maybe the Angels just need an overhaul of the team, the players, the name, everything, because not to get into the religious aspect of things, but when you die, they say you become an angel, right? And it almost seems like that team is like where careers just die. So maybe they just need to get rid of the name.
They won a World Series in 2002. They just need the rally monkey. They won a World Series in 2002. It happened. I watched it. I swear. It's become very amusing to me. It's like, guys, I literally watched the Winter World Series in 2002. That was the year Barry Bonds was in the World Series with San Francisco, and San Francisco had a couple of chances to win that. I was actually chatting with Jason Cards and Comics about that, separate from the live stream we did, and I went and looked at it. Bonds hit 471 in that World Series. Like, he played really well. Like, he was hitting the cover off the ball. He was right in the middle of peak Bonds. So he was tearing the cover off the ball. Better living through chemistry. But but they couldn't get him out basically for the majority of that World Series. Like, he was crushing the ball. So as an individual, he did about as much as you could. And they went to 7 games. So they had opportunities to win that series, but the Rally Monkey beat him. So I just think you need to get rid of Fish Boy and bring back the Rally Monkey, and they'll be fine. I'm sure Tim Salmon is out there somewhere. Go get Tim Salmon. Come back and bless you. It'll be fine. All right. Anything else that's on our minds here before we move on to one of the other topics? Good stuff. All right, so we'll be back. Also, I want to remind anybody who watches this in replay, if there's any kind of questions that you guys want to ask us about anything, you can put it in the comment section, because sometimes we may use that in a segment down the road, so I just leave it open-ended, or if anybody reaches out to any of us, we can always incorporate that if there is a question that we want to bring up. So going from here, one of the things we wanted to talk about a little bit, let's talk about the CGC thing, Bobbles. Do you want to give me a little background on it, on what you noticed, and then we'll briefly chat about it before we get into the main topic?
So yeah, I actually got reached out to. I didn't realize it at first, but I had received an email. And I know everybody that is familiar with who I am in past few years is most notably the SGC thing, and that's the company that I allegedly own, and this and that and the other. But anyway,
Who
I
bowed to your
am.
will. Your
Yeah.
disapproval made them change their ways.
You broke them.
Yeah.
Oh, no, no. But I'm also an authorized dealer for CGC, Certified Collectible Group, actually CCG. And I guess I got an email. Didn't My wife deals with the emails, and I guess she just didn't even pay any attention and tossed it in the trash bin. And then I got a message on Instagram just from a gentleman named Ivan, saying, "Hey, just following up, I sent you an email." And I'm like, "You did?" So went through
Mhm.
and found it. But anyway, CGC is creating a marketplace. And let me rephrase that. They are creating a marketplace inside of a marketplace website. And that's going to
Okay.
sound really confusing. But there is a platform out there called District. The site is district.net. And what little bit I have learned from it, I was onboarded and kind of shown around a little bit. Um, it's the theory behind it is kind of like a Facebook group slash whatnot slash eBay, like hybrid site that they're trying to build. And from some background I got from it, it was developed by some folks who created Snapchat and stuff.
Is this the one?
And yeah, that's the site. And like
Okay. So just
you
for the
you
audio
see up
folks,
there.
I'm sharing the just for the audio folks, I'm sharing the website. I'll include a link to it in the description since we brought it up and talked about it, just so you can go check it out for yourself. But we're just looking at it. So go ahead. You can describe it as you want.
So up in the search bar, just type in CGC. It should bring it up.
Okay. CGC. All right.
Okay, there you go.
Marketplace here.
CGC Marketplace for C. Yep, there it is. So this is their marketplace. Um, as you see, there's not many members or anything. It's
Yeah.
currently for dealers. I don't know if it's going to be solely dealers, but what happens is there's a bunch of different marketplaces within this site, and you have to join the marketplace. You see on this one it says join, and
Mm-hmm.
then you actually have to be approved to be allowed to sell within that marketplace. And this one has been initially set up for dealers. The coolest thing I'll say that I was shown is something called magic comments. If that can be implemented across platforms and stuff, it's a cool feature. I don't know if this is exclusive to their site or where, like, who developed it. But you know how people like will post cards on Instagram, and
Yep.
like say that Jordan that you have there on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
post it on Instagram, they'll put a price or whatever, but then you have to go through like commenting and blah 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 and back and forth negotiations and all that. You could take one of these cards and share it to Instagram or X slash Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and say that Charizard there, you throw it up there and just put, it'll put like the price or whatever, and a commenter can just type claim, and it will automatically DM them a link to go in and check out and purchase the item securely. So there's none of
Okay.
this, do you accept Zelle or Venmo or whatever? It's literally a checkout process, and all they have to do is hit claim. I thought that feature was really cool because then it expands to multiple social platforms and everything just by sharing the cards. But um, I don't know. It was something interesting. I don't know how much it'll take off, especially if it's limited to just dealers. I don't know what kind of volume or traffic this district site actually gets, but there you go, guys. There's another platform out there. I had never heard of it before this, so there is another marketplace platform out there, and looks to be CGC is going to try to utilize it. So
So I'll say I like Eric, the feature of incorporating it with other social medias and having a way of directing you to like the checkout feature. I think that is interesting. I think
Hmm.
because it allows you to cross post because you could be in a couple of
Yep.
different places. And just the fact, like I said, I've never seen this before prior to us having this discussion right now, but just on the surface, the fact that you could cross post, the fact that you could then have a direct path to a checkout process, which maybe you do it through PayPal, and then that gives you PayPal protections and certain things built into it. So as the buyer, it makes me more comfortable that I have recourse. It's not
Yep.
friends and family. I could do it. If I can do it through those, then I have anti-fraud things that I can use as protection. Just on the surface, interesting. It's tricky because we've got so many marketplaces, but I like the fact you could incorporate that to something that people use today. So I think that's
That
interesting.
feature was cool. The guy actually showed it, like showed me how it worked. He posted one to his Instagram account, and then he
Yep.
was like, go here, type in claim. I typed in claim, and it immediately direct messaged me like a checkout thing. It says, it's yours, check out, blah blah blah. You click on it, boom, it's right there. It's a secure checkout and everything. I thought that was really cool. The
I agree.
site itself, I don't know how much traction it'll get, but that
Yep.
feature, that's really interesting.
Yeah. I almost like it as creating that middleman. Like to your point, there are people who sell cards on Instagram now, but you have to go
Hmm.
through the back and forth and being like, okay, so where you're sending it, or what kind of payment you're taking. To your point, but just having the features built into that, um, it's almost like if you had your own website with a Shopify account, something like that, where there's like somebody
Hmm.
in the middle allowing payments to happen. So like or Stripe or one of these other ones that allow you to take payments, but something on a secured page that controls it, and then you've got your address info in there, so that way they know where to send you the item. And then again, you're still using a secured payment method that if something
Yep.
goes wrong, you've got somebody you can talk to, and you don't have the same headaches that certain things create for you.
And this is why I don't, do business on Instagram. I get people all the time asking me, if you're interested in this, you're interested in that. And a lot of times I am. It's just what I'm looking for. But it's like, okay, well, I'm not just going to Venmo you $200
Mm-hmm.
in hopes that send this to me. Um, and so then you start looking into the third party platforms, and we know that there's at least two. We, the three of us, know that there's at least two.
Yep.
Um, so and then other people like, no, I don't want to get involved in that. And it's like, well, if you don't want to get involved in that, that is that's a red light for me, because I can't just have a stranger say, hey, do you like this Gordie Howe card? Send me $200. Well, that's there's nothing there protecting me.
Mm.
Hmm.
So I'll only work on platforms where I do have some type of protection, that the platform has your information. The payment methods like PayPal offer protection. Um, I can't just throw money at an invisible stranger online and hope that he'll mail me the card that he promised.
Look,
And
John Cena is very trustworthy. The fact that you can't see him does not take anything away. And he's from Massachusetts. You should trust this man as much as anybody else.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do
It's West
want
Newbury, I
to
believe.
mention
It's too far away from me.
Go ahead, Bobbles.
the site also does have an app. So if you're interested in not even just on the CGC aspect of it, there's other like there's a bunch of different marketplaces in there. Um, it does have an app, and the guy that reached out, I just said his name was Ivan, but he's actually I guess pretty popular into the car space. I had heard the name before,
Okay.
but he goes by Watch the Brakes or the Brakes or something like that
Okay.
on Instagram and X/Twitter. It's weird calling it X, but yeah,
No,
it's the Brakes or Watch the Brakes. So
Gotcha. And in the spirit of what we talked about earlier in this episode, not sponsored, either CGC or district. But
no, 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 no. I
but
was just
Bobbles had
sharing it
meant. But
because
yeah, I just want to make sure. Look, we're being transparent. We want to make sure we're clear on it. But no, thank you for sharing it. I knew that you had mentioned something about it, and I wanted to get a little bit of a breakdown of it. Again, I don't know enough to be able to give a definitive statement. Conceptually, sounds interesting. If it can provide a good middleman to facilitate some of those transactions, because some people like to transact in Instagram or Facebook or whatever. If you make it easier for me as a buyer to feel more secure, that can only help. That's not a bad thing. That could be useful. Of course, people will still try to circumvent the system and do stuff. That always happens no matter what. But again, if you can use payment formats that allow you to have some recourse as a buyer, that I'd prefer. That's what eBay became after a while. Once you were able to use some of those payment methods that you could get a refund if something went wrong, that helped facilitate transactions because people just didn't feel comfortable, PayPaling without, friends and family without having a recourse or doing Zelle as Eric talks about or any
You
of those
didn't
things. It's like you need something.
you didn't like sending cash and coins through the mail on eBay to buy items and then have
I
to wait
liked it.
for it to
I
get
liked
there?
it when I said an ironic type of change. When
Yeah.
it's like when somebody was a bit of a jerk, it's like $2. All right, in dimes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
no,
those
I just wanted,
early eBay days was scary.
yeah, I just really wanted to share that because more importantly than District itself or CGC, again, none of this is sponsored. It was an interesting thing to me because outside of Arena Club, I don't know of any other grading company that has a marketplace. And this could be something that we see in the future where these grading
Do you
companies
count
start
Golden though?
getting.
Do you count Golden because they're under collectors?
I don't, because
Okay.
they're already their own platform.
No, fair enough.
Um,
I just wanted to pose the question because because obviously Golden is still at least at the moment under collectors.
PSA,
So
yeah.
it's part of the parent company. They're both of them are owned by collectors brand.
I look at them more as consignment
Okay, fair enough.
because,
Sure.
yeah, it feels more consignment there. So
Okay. We'll have to see if down the road now the other pieces if down the road's Fanatics gets any third party grader, they'll also have their thing with PWCC, so they'll have the marketplace as well going with that. But no, fair enough. All right, I just want to make sure we define that if so that we're clear. But yeah, that's reasonable. But thank you for bringing that to the table. That is interesting. I guess something worth keeping an eye out on. I'm not going to endorse it or recommend it because we don't know enough. But I think it's interesting. I think the concept is interesting. I'd like to see it develop more and see what comes down the pipeline of that. Cool. Sounds good. All right. So let's get into the main topic here of this evening, which is we wanted to talk a little bit about what the current state is with the local card shop. One of the things that, speaking of Fanatics, the Fanatics overlords, is that the distribution model, the changes that are going to come of that. One of the things that becomes a question is we phrased it as is the local card shop still necessary, but really comes down to maybe in the same conversation, it could be like, I think the local card shop will still exist as a thesis. That I'd throw that out, but I guess the nature of it would change. And the question is, maybe we phrase it like, what role does the local card shop still play? We can give a little bit of some examples of the past and all that, and we've got a couple different angles we can take through this. Eric actually moonlights when he's not paying for the like button, which he enjoys very much. When he's not doing that, he moonlights in I think it's Sports World,
Yes.
which is one of the longest running and not longest running episodic, but still very long running card shop. over in that neck of the
1986.
woods.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is
the largest sports memorabilia shop in New England, possibly outside of New England, and we have been in business since 1986.
yeah, which in this space is huge because it meant they were part of the boom period and hung around. They survived the 90s, which was a big thing with a lot of shops that didn't. And that'll kind of play into that story. So at this point in time, since it's a natural segue, I'm also going to mention, for what we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, this episode is brought to us by AMG Collectibles. AMGcollectibles.com, who are a local card shop based out of Nova Scotia. Thank you to AMG Collectibles for supporting this podcast and this channel. And links will be in the description if you want to check it out, as well as their YouTube channel, which will be growing and expanding in the coming days and weeks. And there's going to be some fun stuff on there and some other things that we'll talk about when the time is right. But I wanted to make sure I included that. So thank you again for AMG Collectibles for supporting this conversation wherever it's going to go. Now back to your discussion currently in progress. All right, so we've got Eric's Sports World ties. I've got my ties with what I'm doing with AMG Collectibles. Quickly, I'll give one background, and then I want to get yours as well, Bobbles. I had the local LCS when I was a kid. And then what happened is after a while, obviously, a lot of those got ravaged. The ones that weren't able to adjust and survive. One shop that I will say survived, but I wouldn't consider an LCS because it was a little bit out of my way, was Legends of the Game, which was in Toronto. And that was a big card shop. And then the 90s, especially the early 90s, they were within close proximity of the Sky Dome and the Toronto Blue Jays. So they really relied on the tourist trade. The tourist foot traffic is really how they relied on it. And it was, and I think this is going to come full circle because I want to talk about what the card shops are going to look like going into the future. At the time, in addition to being a tourist trap and being within range of that and all the activities happening in downtown Toronto, they had these massive sports memorabilia displays, beautiful memorabilia and all that. So it was almost an experience walking in because you could see all this cool stuff, all these big, all these shelves, and they bought collections and they had tons of singles, they had boxes, they had all this stuff, which at the time obviously drew a lot of traffic to it in addition to the location and everything. Of course, overhead, being in the city and being in a main hub in a big spot, obviously jacked up the prices as a result of that. So it was this weird balancing act where they had tons of foot traffic, tons of inventory, stuff coming in, coming out all the time. But at the same time, they did create an early version of the experience. It wasn't the grungy old card shop because I visited a bunch of those back then. I think, though, funny enough, maybe they were a little bit ahead of the game because I think today, a lot of the newer card shops that I think Fanatics is going to cater to with a lot of their stuff is going to be the more experiential. Kind of like you come in and it's like a hangout spot and it's very comfortable and obviously very bright and not so dingy, if that makes any sense. Do you want to give a little background, maybe card shop wise or local card shop memories or anything like that, Bubbles?
So, growing up in my youth days, which would have been, mid 80s to late 90s, I was fortunate enough to actually have two LCS in the same town. One was on one side of town, one was on the other. Town wasn't that big. My mom would drop me off at one. And yes, people, if you're young and wouldn't believe this, but my mom could drop me off at the card shop on one side of town. She could go run and do her errands, and it was perfectly fine and not frowned upon if I left the card shop and walked across town and went to the other card shop, as long as she knew where I was and which one I was going to be at so she could pick me up. Mm-hmm. But one of them was in a bookstore, and it had, a small section that had packs and binders of cards and a display case and all that. And then the other one was, your normal, typical, what you would expect card shop. Neither of those still exist. They are both since gone. When I moved to Indiana in around 2002, I found a card shop over there. It was called Cardboard Connection in Columbus, Indiana. Two guys ran it, younger dudes. Awesome shop. I was there almost daily. I made good money. Indiana cost nothing to live. A lot of expendable income. I went there, bought cards. And the key to it all, I think for all of us would agree, hanging out. Like, collecting cards isn't we see it as something big that, everybody does because we know a lot of people that do it. But in the reality, it's kind of a nerdy thing, and not a lot of people do it. So the card shop gives you the card shop gives you this safe place where other nerdy people that are doing the same thing, collecting pieces of cardboard, you can talk to them and have fun. So I think that is a big reason that they'll always exist. It's kind of like the barbershop, right? Not everybody goes there. Bald guys can go to the barbershop, but the conversation's good. Today I have a card shop. I actually am not far from Blowout, but I don't hardly ever go there. I go to the other LCS, and it's the same thing. I don't even have to go in there to buy anything. I just like going in there and talking and hanging out. So
it would have made me so happy,
Eric has people bringing mayonnaise.
Exactly. But it would have made me so happy, Eric, if Bobbles had gone to Blowout and it was just an extension of the message board and conversation consists of people yelling over each other. That'd be amazing. It's like just think about a message board forum, but like in physical form. He walks in and all of a sudden he goes, it's like, Juan Soto's overrated. No, he's the best. And they're just screaming at each other. And that's all. And somebody comes in for the third one. It's like, if Vladdy's the man. And they're just yelling at each other.
It's funny you mention that because for some reason, and I still to this day do not have an explanation, I am assuming it's because I was quote unquote inactive. But my account was permanently banned from the Blowout forums. And I never even posted on there. I created an account to go on and read posts and stuff, but I never posted on there. Went to go on and log in one day, and it said my account was banned, and it said time period or whatever, and it said, whatever, infinite. I called the shop to ask them if somebody could help me. They have no connection to the Blowout forum, so I guess it's just piggybacking the name because Blowout was so well known in the online wax wholesale, site. So
Right.
I was told they have no connection to the Blowout forums.
Or they're in on the conspiracy. Like
Maybe.
I think
That could
the
be
conspiracy.
too. That could be
Eric,
too.
the conspiracy goes deep. I think it goes deep. So real quick, I just want to add one thing off of what Bobbles is saying, and then I'll pass it to you, Eric. I agree about the hangout aspect of it. What happened though is once that early '90s period kind of died off, because as I said, Legends of the Game, as beautiful a shop as it was out of the way, and it was expensive, and it wasn't something I could visit all the time. Unfortunately, once the real local card shops died off, the only thing we had was you had some flea markets that were larger flea markets, and there were several dealers that would set up at the flea market just because the cost was lower and everything, and they could be doing other stuff during the week. But then on weekends, they'd set up shop there, literally set up shop, and they would get an account with the distributor. So you'd be able to get the new wax. So actually, on release day, you'd get the new wax, even though it was like you think, oh, flea market. It's like no, actually, they were getting the new wax. So they would get like a case of the new wax, crack it open some stuff up to make singles, and then at the same time, you could buy boxes, you could open packs, and do all that. So you still got a taste of that experience. Plus, they had singles as well, and you could buy them. But that became the hangout. It was my dad would go down with my younger brother and I, and we would go, and he would go hang out at one of the other booths, and we would be hanging out there. And some of my friends that would come by, like on a Saturday or on a Sunday, they would come by and visit, and there would be like a procession of different ones, and we'd hang out, sorting through the boxes. So that was the way kind of we played it out. Very similar to it, but again scaled down because it was. But then you also had another dealer that was right beside, so the two of them could compete to each other, literally face to face inside of the same space, which was always kind of funny. But in the '90s and early 2000s, you had these two booths that would operate effectively a small card shop out of this flea market. But that was it. That was basically. But the idea of the hangout was still a thing because you just sit there and chat about this, that, or the other thing, and that's what you do for those hours. Because you can only, unless you have a lot of money, you can only open so many packs. But you could also watch other people open boxes and packs and kind of scrutinize and look at what's going on and kind of talk back and forth with it. So it was a good experience, and it was a good hangout. That was part of the experience of doing the whole thing, in addition to getting your own stuff. So with that said, Eric, if you want to share any experiences about card shops or anything, and then of course you also got Sports World that you can throw into it. So wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, my first experience with a card shop was in my hometown of Beverly, Massachusetts, and it was actually a pawn shop slash card shop. And the first time I walked in there, I that was it. I was in love. This is where I wanted to spend every bit of my paper route money, and I wanted every free moment I had to be spent here. Just had everything that you could want. Plus, there was people in there that could teach you about this stuff as a young kid, just getting into the hobby. There was people there that teach you all about it, teach you about the players, which ones you want to collect, how you want to take care of your stuff, and kind of be role models in the collection world. And I just thought this was the coolest place to be. And I would spend hours upon hours going through boxes and boxes and boxes of commons and loose cards. And, I'd ride my bike over there and spend 4 or 5 hours until finally my parents would come pick me up, throw the bike back in the car, bring me home for dinner. And I know my mother would always be like, tell the owner, is it okay he spends this much time here? And these guys like, absolutely no problem. He sits there quietly and he just, is having a good time. He's a good kid, the whole thing. So
Yeah, the irony is that his mother still has that same conversation with local shop owners to this very day.
with Phil, mostly, is
Same.
it okay that he comes to work every day? Is he doing a good job? Do you want me to keep him home?
Valid questions.
I thought that's
Valid
what
questions.
she gets on. I thought that's what she gets in the chat on Friday nights to make sure it's okay that you've hung out
Yeah,
for so long.
I've gotten a lot of text messages, Bobbles. I've gotten a lot of text messages constantly
it's
checking.
like it's
Constantly
like,
checking.
Carlos, thanks for letting him do this, and I really appreciate it, but if he gets to be too much, let me know, and I'll talk to him, and and if it ever comes around to not wanting him on the show anymore, I understand.
Mhm. All
It's,
facts. All facts.
yeah, all facts. So I loved going to the card store,
Mhm.
and here I am, knocking on 50, and I still love being in card stores and going to shows. Um, and you get to be around like-minded people, have these conversations, have shared experiences, uh, you know, talk to them about, oh, I picked up this, you picked up that. That's why Instagram is the only social media that I have. Um, because I love going into other people's Instagram accounts and seeing the things that they've picked up. That is like a card shop, and you can type comments, oh, that thing looks great, and where did you get that? I mean, so you can have that experience online, but there's still nothing better than having it face to face, and being able to hold the, the card that you're looking to purchase, and to go through that glass counter, and all of a sudden it's there in the midst, on the second row, third one in, and it's calling to you. I mean, it's a great experience. The question that the three of us would, contemplating having, was, are card shops necessary? And as much as I love them, the word necessary is really, like, the key word, and the answer really is no.
Yep. In
If
2023, it's kind of you've got so many options available to you.
I lived in rural Nebraska, um, with nothing but 50 miles of cornfields, I could still have a large majority of my collection, because as long as I had internet service and the U.S. mail, I could still be buying things, every day.
Hmm.
But you lose a lot. And one of the big complaints we have with kids today is that they spend all their time on their phones and on social media, and they don't interact with people. Card shops and card shows allows that human interaction. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so important that we continue to do this. Even if it's simply as we get a teenager that comes in, and he actually is going to use cash, and you're making change. you know I mean, you don't have to do that on PayPal. So there's so much that is important with continuing to have a brick and mortar, and getting people to walk through, interacting with them, and having those experiences, and having a kid sit there with a giant box on the edge of the counter for 2 hours. You know, the things that we're seeing now, um, are the wax, and someone will buy a box, and they won't wait to go home. They'll open it right there on the edge of the counter. And what happens? Every single person who's in the store, the employees, the other customers, they all flock to see. And it's like that, you can hear the oohs and the ahs and the moans of not getting something. The high fives if he pulls out a banger of a card. You don't get that by sitting home on eBay.
That's fair. I agree. I agree. Now, kind of playing off of that, so I agree with a lot of Eric's sentiment. I think he's making some. I think he is representing the classic card shop experience. Now, I think it's interesting is that unfortunately now that is become fewer farther between, because partially business. Because when it comes to it, but what I mentioned is like the 90s killed off a bunch of them. Realistic is a very hard business to get into. And a lot of what exists today. So I talk about that flea market and everything. The guy who ran the one shop that I would spend most of my time there passed away years and years and years ago. So he's been gone a long time. The other guy's still there, but he's just it wasn't that was less fun of the two, so it wasn't as enjoyable to spend a lot of time hanging out at that booth. It was one of the things, like, it was a nuisance for you to hang out. So it didn't make as much sense. But even going forward, today, I don't open a lot of wax. But if I wanted to these days, it becomes a lot of online just because accessibility. Now, there is a couple places you can get some boxes around here. And I'm in suburbia, but I'm not in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, like, there just aren't too many spots nearby. I got to go out of my way if I want to go to a shop. But most of the shop that exists today are like combo shops. It's not a pawn shop slash card shop. It's more like a comic shop slash card shop, meaning they predominantly deal in comic books, but they will sell wax. So if I want to go buy a box of wax, I can walk down, maybe 15, 20 minutes. There's a comic shop. My younger brother frequents that comic shop. That comic shop's been around a long time. To be fair, it's been part of the community a long time. So it's not like those guys are fly by. No, they've been around a long time. I know who they are. My younger brother does business with them and know who they are. But they also boxes. I can go buy some stuff from them, some supplies and stuff. So it's not like you don't have anything there. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time hanging out there because it's not really a card shop per se. It's kind of transactional. I'm there to basically buy some supplies, maybe buy a box once in a blue moon, and then I'm out of there. There's really no reason for me to hang around because most of the time, unless it's the busiest part of the day, the group of people that are going to be there are buying comic books. That's the majority of what they're doing, which is perfectly fine. Or TCG. TCG is a big one. And a lot of the other shops I go to, today the hangout is TCG. If you play Pokemon, Magic, a lot of these other card games, that is the hangout. If you're doing the cards, you can be opening a box. Most people aren't really paying attention to you. You're basically just doing it on your own anyway. So at that point, you may as well take it home, or you could stream it or do it, do it that way. And then, yeah, some people, because you can still get a little bit of that interactivity, but it will not be in person. So that's one aspect. The other aspect, talking a little bit in the sports world and some of this other stuff, even the card shops that remain, that exist, I think the nature of them will also, and has to change as well. They have to be a lot closer to that Legends of the Game model. Maybe without the overhead cost, but it has to be more of that experience because walking in there was like amazing. It was bright. Even in the early 90s, it was bright and there was very clean space. Yeah, they had tons of singles, binders, all kinds of stuff. But everything was in multiple these large counters. You had the football section, the hockey section, the baseball section, the non-sports and whatever, because they had so much floor space at one point. It was an experience walking into the shop. It was a little ahead of its time. Because I think today what Fanatics is shooting for is they're basically shooting for what Legends of the Game was 30 years ago. But they want that now, and they want that to be a lot closer to the standard, if you guys get what I'm kind of getting at here. Bobbles, any thoughts on kind of that piece of it?
So a question I have, and
Sure.
I would agree to a sense with Eric that they're not necessary,
Yeah.
quote unquote, but I also would question, would the hobby survive as strong without card shops? And the reason I ask this is because all three of us just sat here and talked about the aspect of things that we enjoyed about a card shop or even the card shows, right? And if you remove all of that, I feel like some of the interest level, because let's face it, if you're just, sitting by yourself with cards, it's not as fun, right? You have to have that social aspect of the hobby. It's not just about the cards. It's what the hobby is as a whole. And I also want to bring up, because and I don't know the exact date, but it says I streamed this 3 years ago. I did a live.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're discussing whether or not card shops are necessary, I brought up a video and a topic, and it really was a sincere thought because back when the pandemic hit, it was hard to find wax and everything else. And we all are familiar with EPAC, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I brought up, what if the manufacturers decided we're going to scrap physical cards and we're going to go to an electronic format where you can just sit from the comfort of your home and buy whatever box or pack or whatever you want, similar to EPAC, and you can build a digital card collection. The only caveat to that is if you build like a complete set or something like that, there could be redeemables for special editions, but they would be saving on so much trash and waste and shipping and distribution and all of that, and it would just be electronic based, site based product. Everybody said it was the dumbest idea and they would hate it that they want that physical thing. It's a similar thought process. Like, as much as people say card shops suck and they're not needed and everything else, I think a lot of those are, and nothing against these folks, but a lot of them are the newer crowd that's just in it for the flip, right? They're buy card, sell card. They're not in it for that aspect of what the card shop brings. And I think if they didn't exist, if they were to be extinguished and no longer remain, you would lose a lot of the interest of many people that are actually in the hobby.
Sure. I think that's reasonable. So let me kind of touch on, there's a couple of places we can go with this. We talk about sports world, Eric, and kind of what's going on over there at a high level. So actually, let me touch on this, and then I'll transition into sports world because you can speak to that directly. Look, we joke and teased about AMG and how they're supporting the channel and everything, but I know the folks that are doing that. Part of the reason we even made that arrangement was because I know those folks, and I'm happy to work with them on that. But and I promise it's not pushing you for the next plug. We'll save it the next time. But the point is, the shop that they reopened is designed closer to that newer style design. It is meant to be an experience. And on that channel, one of the things we'll get a chance to do is to show that a little bit. But there's designated sections of it where people can open up the singles, and then there's spaces for people to do that. There's spaces for people to open up wax. So it's almost like kind of what I talked about a little earlier about designing the shop to invite you to come in and spend some time inside, not just transactionally come in, grab the product, and get out. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the comic shop. The comic shop has been a staple of this community, so it's not like the owner is saying, "Oh yeah, get in, get your stuff, and get out." But it's a comic shop predominantly. So if I'm not, a comic guy, I'm not going to spend a lot of time hanging in there chatting about, the latest set of comics that are coming out. But again, like I said, they will still sell me some wax. But it's not really a dedicated card shop. In this area, in this vicinity, there are no dedicated card shops anymore. Everything is something like that. It's a hybrid. But if you are a card shop, yeah, you're still going to sell memorabilia. You might sell like the pop figures or whatever if they're related to it and everything. But the idea was to design a lot of these things. I think that's what Fanatics has started to go for. Card Collector 2 is somebody on YouTube where they talk about it and they do show off that shop. And they're trying to make this, here's the wall of wax and here's this. And then they do trade nights. They'll have events that they will host to try to get people. The whole point is to get people in the building and to be physically in proximity and hang out and trade cards and move it, because that creates, the infamous, the vibe. That creates the vibe that then encourages that type of thing, kind of playing into what Bobbles was talking about. So I think there's going to be more of that. AMG are trying to do that as well for them. And it makes sense because if you want to be part of the future, and that's what everything your people are kind of moving towards, gravitating toward, and you want to be one of the ones that will hang around going forward in the future, you got to play into that game. That's the way you've got to be. Do you want to add anything sports world-wise, Eric? You mentioned that people will open boxes and then people will gravitate towards it. That's a little bit more in that old school vibe. But they've been around since '86. Have they modernized anything at all, or is there an element of it that still holds to that old school? Like, is it a mix and match? What does it look like today?
Well, this is our 5th location. Every location has grown. It has gotten bigger and more things have been added. We're going into our 2nd year and the newest in the 5th location. When we have customers come in for the first time, I kid you not, I know it sounds like, maybe I'm overselling, but it's really true. They come in and their mouths are agape. They're in shock over how much we have. They can't believe all the game used sports memorabilia that it's like, you want to hold the stick that Ray Bork played with? Yeah, hold the stick that Ray Bork played with.
Do you get to play with the stick that Eric once dropped on the floor, allegedly?
No, we sold that. I didn't drop it on the floor. I hit a shelf with it.
My apologies. I'm sorry. My apologies. Did we
Yes,
include the authentication?
Did we
photo match it? Did we photo match it to the video that you hit it with the shelf, because
That,
that's a thing, Bobbles. That's an issue right now that we
that's
got
a
to factor in.
that
Did
was
we
a
photo match
game
it?
used. That was a game used Bobby Orr stick from the early '70s. Um, yeah, the one and only time I've done an Instagram video, and I was in my office, which is really kind of small, and I dinged the metal shelf with it, But people come in and they're just shocked, and they start asking questions because
Mhm.
I think people are trained to not believe um, that sports memorabilia is real, and there's no way we could have these many autographs. Well, then we take out our phones and say, okay, well, um, for an example, we had former Patriot Lawyer Malloy in a week ago.
Yeah.
We have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds since 1986 of athletes, from wrestling to football to hockey to baseball, basketball, anyone that we can get a hold of. Our next person coming in is Bruins goalie Jeremy Swayman. And former Boston Bruin Nick Foligno is the one that told him to come do business with us, because Nick enjoyed his time with us before he left to go play for Chicago. We know these guys. We have a former Bruin working for us. You can come in and meet a Bruin. He's sitting right there. So when they start realizing that Ray Bork comes in every couple of months when we call him and ask him to, they really start becoming even more amazed over the things that we have. And we take them on tours and we show them this and we say, what kind of things you're interested in. Now, a lot of this stuff is very high priced and they can't afford it, but they leave thinking this place is wonderful and they can't wait to come back. And that is what has kept us in business since 1986, is that we can offer the customer things that the average card shop cannot. And there are other card shops in the area, and they've come and gone over the years, and there are a few still around. I don't think they're doing as well since the boom collapsed.
Mhm.
But you can go over there and you can buy wax, but that's all you're getting. It's just cards, and they don't even have the assortment of cards that we do.
Can I ask you a question? So, kind of in the vein of what you're talking about, obviously you talked about the game use, you talked about all those elements of it. Um, are there that's kind of why I talked about the AMG thing or the Card Collector 2 or whatever, because they were trying to build out, when they're designing their floor plans, they were trying to incorporate these different areas, these different aspects of it to make it inviting. Because
Yeah.
the old dingy card shop, there's the old dingy card shop stereotype where stuff is stacked on top of stuff. Yeah, there's if you're a kid in there and you want to sort through all kinds of things, that doesn't say there isn't still the opportunity to sort through things. But the point is that you walk in and it feels organized, at least to a certain degree. It feels clean. It feels like, yeah, I can spend some time hanging out here, and maybe there are some value boxes, and maybe I get a chance to do some digging, but it's structured digging. It's not like a complete disaster area where we're digging out of necessity. It's no, we put a bunch of cards in here, we priced them out. Do what you're gonna do. Go take a look and see what you find, and it's meant to be like to give you a chance to do that. But when you walk in, it's meant to be like, no, hang out a while, because it's designed and set up for that. Is that kind of what the current version of Sports World is designed to be like? I come in, I
Absolutely.
see all the stuff, but I also can hang out for a while.
Yeah, we want people to stay. We tell them that, hey, look around, take your time. And you want to sit and look through some stuff, just let us know. We have thousands and thousands of magazines. Um, some are autographed, some are not. Vintage magazines from the, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s of all the different sports. We got wrestling programs dating back to the beginning of professional wrestling. Signed 8x10s by the thousands, signed 16x20s by the hundreds. With all these different sports, thousands of autographed baseballs, thousands of autographed pucks. We have a whole wall behind glass of signed helmets, signed footballs, signed basketballs, signed sneakers. We have all this stuff. So people come in, and especially for the first time, it's like they're in a museum. And we've actually had special organizations saying, hey, do you have any of this? Can we borrow it for an event that we're doing?
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, sure. Just make sure that it says donated by Sports World, so we get that that publicity. That's all. So yeah, it's important that when someone comes in, I love watching them come in, and like I said earlier, their mouths are agape.
And it's not just because, oh my God, you're Eric from the YouTube thing.
That
Oh, and then the card shop's nice too.
that has happened a few times, which I think is hysterical, where people have asked me if I'm me. And one gentleman came in, I was vacuuming, and he kind of got my attention. I shut the vacuum off, and I'm like, hi, how can I help you? And they asked if I was me. And I'm like, yeah. And oh yeah, I watched the show. I was in the area. You mentioned it, and I wanted to pop in. Yeah, he came in to say hi to me, and we showed him around some stuff. He bought some stuff. That was great.
And then you send a
But
jar of mayonnaise for him and send him on his merry way. I like it.
sent him on his merry way. But yeah,
So
that I could think of 3 times that has happened, and I find it to be weird because I don't see myself as anything special by any means.
I think I figured something out, Eric.
Mm.
You just said you were vacuuming, right?
I was vacuuming the shop floor. Yeah, that's
Okay.
an employee's
And
responsibility.
earlier in the conversation, you said your office and that it was very small and there was a metal rack in there.
Yes.
I'm putting these lines together. Are you the damn janitor?
Sometimes I feel
And
like
your office is the closet, the
I
janitor's
sometimes-
Look, Bobbles,
closet.
I didn't want to go there.
Sometimes
I
I feel that
sensed it. I sensed it. He's the one. Like, if for whatever reason down the road we find out there's some kind of we find out there's a behind the music of Sports World, and we find out that Eric was in the front window just doing this, just looking busy, just to be like, "Yep, legit establishment, you guys, legit.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Look, I'm sweeping. See me sweeping."
But we can appreciate it though because they have a long-term success rate. Obviously, if they have a janitor in a janitor's closet, much respected because they take pride in keeping the place clean.
I take pride.
Props to Sports World.
I take pride in keeping the place clean, and I get made fun of and busted on a lot because I want to make sure there's no fingerprints on the glass. I want to make sure there's no fingerprints on the door. I want to make sure the floor is vacuumed, that things are organized.
Fingerprints on the glass, Bubbles. Fingerprints on the glass. It all goes back to when there's shady dealings. Like, my fingerprints will not be found.
So
this is taking a dark turn.
There's
and
a lot of
I'm appreciating
fun to be
We
had.
learned a lot.
There's a lot of fun to be had at work over my anal retentiveness of cleaning.
Wow. There you go. So let's so right now we're kind of around the time that I want to keep these episodes to. We're hovering right around that time period that I think is good. But no, it's a good conversation. I want to give any opportunity for any kind of last thoughts. I think it was fun reminiscing on some of the old card shop thing. That was a fun. I do think that the future, as we were discussing it, once I brought up the Legends of the Game thing, it did strike me that almost in some ways, what Fanatics is looking for was what they were 30 years ago, which is crazy. Like, if you really think about it, like they just, because of the market they were in downtown Toronto, they wanted to stand out from the other one, and they were like in prime real estate location. They needed to show a certain premiumness to it. It couldn't be just a dingy card shop and try to be the tourist trap they were trying to be. But in a certain way, they were too soon. The time wasn't right yet for that. But it was a very interesting. It was an experience to go there. It was something that if you had the time, that it was fun to go out of the way. And I got a chance to have some good deals back then. It was interesting.
Is there still a card shop on Yonge Street, or maybe just off of Yonge Street, down by Maple Leaf Gardens?
There were a couple
I
that
remember
were
going to that back in like 1999.
so there were a couple that were on Young Street all the way up and down the street. So there's a
Yeah.
couple that were there. I think some of them still are, and some of them have changed out over time. That's what I mean. Like the a lot of the economics have evolved, and part of it, honestly, is real estate price. That's honestly what changed a lot of the dynamics of it. Again, overhead costs, right? Part of the problem with Legends of the Game is because it was literally down the street from the Sky Dome. So you got potentially this, and what do? You put a bunch of Blue Jay team sets. Think of the early '90s when the Blue Jays are the hot ticket in town, and
Right.
I want to get some Jays cards. Boom, they got racks full of them, and they're ready to go for you. And you can get as much as the stuff that you want of the current players and memorabilia and all that stuff was there. And they had game use and they had jersey racks all full of stuff back then.
All I wanted to do was go to Gretzky's restaurant, man, because that was heaven. Just walking around there and seeing all that game use stuff from Wayne Gretzky. That place was incredible. I don't remember what the food was like, but oh
It was
man,
it was a name restaurant, probably glorified Burger King.
it
But
was. I don't care, man. That right behind Sky Dome was Wayne Gretzky's restaurant, and God,
Yep.
is that awesome!
the key thing though is it was interesting that in some ways they literally were ahead of their time, and now today what Fanatics is pitching that they say they want is basically what they were doing back then. I think that what's happened is that a lot of the dedicated card shops, they started moving into the suburbs and then almost beyond the suburbs. So I think there are certain places like the AMG is out in Atlantic, Canada. In the community they're in and everything, it makes sense. In certain communities, it's easier to set it up. But when I think about here, a lot of the card shops that I think of that still operate as card shops are out in Hamilton, are out, basically you hit the highway and you drive. It's not like 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away. You got to drive like half an hour, 45, 50 minutes because it's in the city, but that city, a couple of cities over. We got to go almost beyond the suburbs into the suburbs of the suburbs, because probably partially because costs are cheaper, and you've got millions of people around you, so it's not like you don't have a pool of people to draw. And of course, the better your website is, the more e-commerce traffic you can draw. Then that's where you make some of the money right there. Because sometimes I buy my supply from them. If I want to save a little bit of money, I'll order online, and they'll ship me the supplies. And it's over in Hamilton, but it's maybe about 35, 40 minutes away if I really wanted to go there and go get. But it's out of my way. Day to day, it doesn't make sense for me. But I would love to go check out that card shop at some point. But that's basically where the card shops are now. It's no longer like in this community. Everything that's left is a hybrid. It has to be a hybrid shop / something else. Otherwise, they don't survive.
Just real quick to touch on, so listening to both of like Sports World and then AMG, etc., the other shops you spoke on, my card shop's actually a bit different than all of that that's spoken, but he's actually been in business for 20 plus years. He is in a downtown prime real estate. A lot of foot traffic, a lot of population there. But the owner's name is Bart, and I think he has built a very successful model for being able to retain and sustain business, even in wishy-wash times with sports cards in general. But he doesn't have a website, so he has no e-commerce platform. He doesn't do breaks. In fact, one thing I wish he would increase was singles, like value box singles. Wish he would increase that a little bit. But what he's done is he has enough space in the shop that he has made it not just a card shop, not just adding some memorabilia or comics or supplies or whatever collectibles themselves. He also has gift shop vibe. He has the stuff for the ladies. If they're coming in with their husband, they can go over and look at perfumes or lip balms, or he even has some clothes in there, like gift type clothing and stuff. So he's kind of split the model to where it actually appeals to the full audience. Like anybody that walks in there could find something, not just cards, but the cards are a large portion of the shop. So I think he's been very smart on designing the shop that way, because he gets a lot of business and a lot of traffic in there and a lot of repeat customers. So
Fair enough. I think it's funny though, Eric. This reminds me. So what the fate of Legends eventually became that the real estate was so expensive that eventually they had to. What they did is they scaled back. They cut the shop in half, and they took that unit, cut it in half, and the other half became a Tim Hortons. So basically, you had the Tim Hortons. So basically, you'd have the double doors. The Tim Hortons was on the left, and the
Yeah.
card shop was on the right. The card shop still had a decent amount of floor space, but obviously you chopped it in half, so they had to start selling off a bunch of stuff to do it. I almost think, though, speaking to Bobbles at this point, it would have been hilarious if the owner of Legends had intentionally made it a Tim Hortons and actually done it that way. I wonder if that would have worked for him. Been like, I'll just own both.
If we could stick a Dunkin' Donuts onto our building, we would do it in a heartbeat because you'd get so much more traffic. You'd make
just-
You
so
would
much
keep
money.
the company in business
Hey, I
yourself.
was gonna say you personally would keep the company in business. Between that and Bougie Eric 8x10 sales at the front door, like it'd be like the place would be making a mint. You know, they could get out of cards entirely, just go based on the Dunkin' Donuts and the Eric autograph 8x10s. We're done.
And instead of the claiming, Eric wouldn't be on here claiming the largest memorabilia shop in the Northeast. He would be the best chocolate sticks in the entire world. Like we would go beyond the country. We would the entire world. The
Well,
best
he'd be
chocolate
personally
sticks.
ensuring quality control, and he would not.
Yep.
He would not accept. He would give no quarter. It must be the best, and he will personally inspect to make sure that quality is maintained.
Precious ingredient. Instead of those fingerprints on the glass, no longer. Not vacuuming the floors. We are inspecting those dang ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got to do it. It's a tough job.
And on that bombshell, that'll conclude this episode. I don't know what I'm going to name this episode. I'm going to have some fun with it. But regardless, a pleasure chatting with you, gentlemen. As always, it was a lot of fun. A little trip down memory lane. It was a good topic. I thought it was a lot of fun. The only thought I have is I think it'll be interesting to see what the development is of the card shop going forward. Kind of bring it back to the original question, the role of the card shop today. I think what we all kind of concluded here, and feel free to add anything if you want to. I think there is still a role for it, but I think the role had to change. And I think the version of the card shop that exists today had to be different than what it was when we were all younger, because I don't think that model would have worked today. It has to be different. Even Bobbles' example, he found a model that worked for him. That's fine. But some of these other shops that still want to operate as shops, they incorporate the online element. They'll do, eBay sales. They'll do breaking, whatever. But you do all these other elements. But I think also the experience piece is a piece, because even Sports World, the way Eric described it, that's an experience too. You're basically, by coming in, you're seeing certain things and you're presenting things in a certain way and offering, again, that inviting experience that keeps people in the ecosystem, so to speak. Even if they're not buying something every single time, over time, that's what keeps the clientele cycling through and coming in. And that's how you keep the business operating. That's how you make it sustainable instead of being transactional. And maybe you get their money today, but then they don't even think about you again tomorrow. Anything else you guys want to add then to close off?
I just think that if card shops, just to sum up, if card shops want to continue being a brick and mortar, they have to have more than just cards in there. They have to have other things to get people in. You need to make sure you have plenty of supplies, plenty of cards, plenty of wax, but you also need to get other things in there, whether it be sports memorabilia or something else. You can't just focus on one thing. You can't just be a loose card store with no wax or supplies or sports memorabilia. You won't be successful. So you need to continue to grow your brand, and you need to get it out there. Carlos, you just said it, whether it be making sure you have an eBay account and you're always putting stuff on there, that you're doing breaks on, whatnot, for example, whatever, make sure you have your social media platforms. Everything has to be going. And, it is a lot of work. We have a lot of people working for us that all have different responsibilities. And it's not easy to keep it all going, and sometimes we get a little backed up and we have to play catch up, but it takes a lot to keep a business, a sports card shop open and running and being financially successful today, especially now that the boom has ended.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Diversify.
There you go. So Eric is available at Sanderson D'Or on Instagram. That's the social media. It'll be included in the description. Bobbles here at Bobbles and Ball Cars, and he's back. Back in black. Other things related to back, even though he sort of didn't leave, but he's back anyway. He turned right around. He was like the Simpsons thing. He was gonna go in one direction and suddenly turned around and went straight back out the door whence he came and ended up where he started. So that's basically where he went in.
I'm like the little what is it, the GIF or whatever, where the little boy's like running down the hallway, and then he's like, and then he turns around and runs back. Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Whichever one you want. That's basically what happened. Yeah. So
Yeah.
SGC bulk submissions, and his channel will be in the description if you want to check it out as well. Bobbles, thank you for joining us as always. Eric will
Thank
be
you,
more polite
guys.
and say thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Exactly. And if you check it out on the YouTube channel, Eric is still paying for the like button. And also thanks to our friends at AMG for giving Eric the very slight, tiny subsidy on the like button that he receives. Otherwise, if you check out the audio version, it is on Spotify, I think Google Play. There's a couple. I forget what the platforms are now. Anchor is the one doing the audio version of it. So it is available on some platforms. You can find it on there. Otherwise, though, if you're on the YouTube channel, that is the hub of all things, because I'm Carlos and all that stuff's in the description, so you can check that out. So we'll be back next week for another episode, another scintillating episode. If you have any questions that you want us to address or touch on for a future segment down the road, you can certainly do that. We're certainly open to it. Or you can send it to either one of us individually if you've got a topic or a question that you want to throw out there, and maybe we'll incorporate it in a future episode. Otherwise, on this YouTube channel, there are live streams on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where sometimes you'll see this cast of characters and other folks as well. And it is a different version of this, where there is audience participation and where we do kind of stare off into the side and question why we even acknowledge these comments in the first place. A lot of times.
Like we said, we're 5%. I'm 5% less grumpy here and 5% smarter here. So on Fridays.
And 5% less Mayo slander for you.
Yeah. And 5%. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate that. Yes.
Good stuff. All right. Thank you all for checking it out. Like and subscribe if you're on the YouTube channel. Give a 5-star review if you're on one of the audio platforms. So that's always appreciated. It does help support the channel. Otherwise, we'll catch you all in the next one.
Thanks, guys.